If you're a Xennial, you've probably felt it in small moments that don't sound important until you notice how often they happen. You can relate to people who grew up before everything became digital, and you can also relate to people who don't remember life without it. You understand both sides, and somehow that leaves you feeling like you're always adjusting. Not confused, just constantly translating. And after a while, that translating starts to feel like a quiet kind of fatigue. Being caught in the middle isn't only a social feeling, it's a psychological position. Xennials often grew up with one set of expectations about privacy, patience, and independence, then became adults in a world that rewards speed, visibility, and constant connection. So your mind learned two different rulebooks. One says, figure it out, stay steady, don't overshare. The other says, stay reachable, keep up, be present, respond. Research shows that when the environment changes quickly, the brain doesn't always replace the old rules. It stacks new ones on top of them. And the result can feel like you're running two operating systems at the same time. That shows up in how you handle stress. Many Xennials look calm because they learned early that panic doesn't help. But calm doesn't always mean relaxed. Studies suggest that people who grew up needing to be self-reliant often develop a problem-solving style that prioritizes control. You don't necessarily freak out. You organize, you plan, you handle it. And that's useful. But it can also mean your nervous system stays slightly activated even when life is stable, because stable still feels like something you have to maintain. This is one reason Xennials often say they feel older and younger at the same time. You can feel mature in how you think, but not always comfortable in the modern definition of adulthood. You remember when adulthood looked like clear milestones, yet you've lived long enough to see those milestones become less predictable. Recent research suggests that prolonged uncertainty changes how people make long-term decisions. When the future feels unstable, the brain becomes more cautious about commitments that reduce flexibility. So being caught in the middle can feel like wanting structure while also feeling wary of it. Your relationship with attention is another place the middle shows up. You remember what it was like to be bored, not as a problem to fix, but as a normal state. You also learned to live in a world where boredom is treated like an emergency. Psychological studies indicate that constant interruption trains the brain to scan for the next stimulus, even when you're trying to rest. So you might crave quiet, yet feel slightly restless when you finally get it. You might enjoy technology, yet feel mentally cluttered by it. And you might miss the older rhythm of life without wanting to romanticize it. Being caught in the middle also shapes identity. Xennials often learned that identity was something you lived, not something you performed. But modern life asks you to curate, to signal, to define yourself quickly. Researchers have found that when social feedback becomes more frequent, people become more aware of how they're perceived, even if they don't care about approval. So you can be authentic and still feel monitored. You can be private and still feel pressure to be visible. And that tension can create a subtle split. One part of you wants to stay simple, and another part of you wants to stay current. Relationships can carry the same pattern. Xennials often value depth, but they also value space. You might want closeness without constant access. You might prefer loyalty and consistency over intensity. Studies suggest that people differ in how much stimulation they find emotionally regulating. If you grew up with more independence and less constant contact, your nervous system may associate safety with breathing room. That can be misunderstood in a world where constant messaging is framed as care. You can care deeply and still feel overwhelmed by the expectation to be always available. Work culture highlights the middle in a different way. Many Xennials learn to work hard without expecting praise, then entered a world where work is also expected to provide meaning, identity, and personal growth. Research shows that when people tie their self-worth to performance, burnout risk increases, especially in unstable environments. Xennials can be practical enough to know work isn't everything, yet self-aware enough to feel the emotional weight of it anyway. That's the middle again. You can see the system clearly, but you still have to live inside it. Another hidden part of being caught in the middle is comparison. You remember a time when self-image was built more privately, but you now live in a world where everyone's progress is visible. Psychological studies indicate that repeated exposure to comparison cues can shift self-evaluation, even when you logically know it's curated. So you can feel grateful for your life and still feel behind. You can be satisfied and still feel the quiet pressure to keep optimizing. Not because you're shallow, but because your attention is constantly being shown other timelines. Over time, this middle can affect self-image. You may see yourself as adaptable, which is true, but you may also feel like your preferences are negotiable. Like you can fit anywhere, but you don't fully belong anywhere. That's not a personality flaw. It's often the after effect of growing up during a shift where the rules changed mid-development. Researchers have found that people who live through rapid cultural change often become highly flexible. But flexibility can become a reflex instead of a choice. And living in reflex mode is tiring. At the same time, the middle can create strengths that are easy to overlook. You can understand multiple value systems without needing to turn one into an identity. You can use modern tools without fully outsourcing your inner life to them. You can tolerate ambiguity because you've practiced it. Studies suggest that cognitive flexibility and perspective-taking increase when people are exposed to different contexts and changing norms. That's basically your upbringing. You didn't just watch the world change. You learned how to function inside the change. So when Xennials say they feel caught in the middle, it isn't just nostalgia or being in between generations. It's a nervous system that learned one rhythm early, then had to learn a second rhythm later, and now carries both. It's the quiet mental work of translating, adapting, and staying stable while the culture keeps shifting. And sometimes the most honest reframe isn't that you're behind or that you missed something. It's that you've been carrying two worlds at once for a long time. And that kind of carrying is rarely visible from the outside. If this felt familiar, you can like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who's always felt caught in the middle.